We're going to go to Australia now, I think to Melbourne, where we're going to meet Sriman Venu Gopala. And Prabhu met the devotees in 1998, and he met Srila Gurudev in 2001. Took Harinam, didn't mess around. He took Harinam that same year and took Diksha in 2002. And I'm really interested. He hosted Gurudev in Japan. I had no idea about that, so I'm fascinated to know about his adventures with Gurudev in Japan, because I've been to Japan 5 times, but never with Gurudev. And I have to say, it's a very fascinating and country with beautiful people. So, Prabhu, you're, I'm not sure what time it is there. It's Howdy Bo, very, very warm welcome. You have half an hour to share your heart with us. It looks very nice and sunny there. And welcome, Howdy Bo.
Thank you, Yasodananda Prabhu. Look, I was listening to Hari Priya and Vanamali Prabhu from New Zealand, and just hasn't Gurudev collected some amazing disciples? You know, they are like jewels. And here I'm here in Murwillumbah in Australia, and some of their sharing was about Murwillumbah. So here I'm in Murwillumbah, and look, I've got a few things I'd like to share. Maybe you could prompt me if I'm going off track, but you know, before I met Srila Gurudev in 2001, I first met all of his disciples. You know, such a wonderful bunch of disciples. You know, humorous, you know, artistic, you know, musical, articulate. You know, scholars, all sorts of different personalities. I was a backpacker, and I came to Byron Bay in Australia, you know, to sort of find what I was looking for, I guess. And I did. I found some musicians. I found a musician named Tapan Mishra. I don't know if you know Tapan. Some devotees may know him. He had his guitar. Yeah. Anyway, he had his guitar. He was singing songs for Gurudev, and you know, I was at a backpackers, and I heard this song of Tapan Mishra, lost in this material world, you know, sung with such enthusiasm. And you know, so he gave me the songbook. He gave me, I got chatting with him. He gave me Gurudev's songbook, the green one, and I was just so intrigued by it, and I started chanting the pranam mantras, you know, from Vandeham all the way up to the Maha Mantra, you know, each day. And I started to feel a connection with Gurudev. You know, I started to feel his mercy through his disciples, through his mantra before meeting him. And then I met, you know, Chandramukhi and Ragaleka from Murwillumbah. I met them, and so many wonderful devotees. And anyway, I was at a university student in New Zealand, in Otago, and Srila Gurudev had, you know, eventually I went back to New Zealand from Byron Bay. Hadn't met Srila Gurudev yet, but had met all of his wonderful disciples from Australia. And I flew up to Auckland from Otago. I heard Gurudev was coming to Auckland, and I arrived late one night in Auckland. And where I was staying happened to be the place where all the sannyasis and brahmacharis were staying. You know, it may have been that Vanamali Prabhu was there and Hari Priya Didi. I may have seen them there. Anyway, I stayed there that night, and we got up at about 3:34 in the morning, very early. And I got into this SUV full of saffron, you know, full of all the sannyasis. I think it was Sajjan Maharaj and Bhakti Sa Maharaj, and I think Prem Priyojan, and just anyway, these sannyasis took me to this house in Auckland, and it was the house of a wonderful devotee named Yogesh Punja. And can you hear me okay, Prabhu? Is the sound okay?
Really good. Yeah, perfect. You're doing great.
And I arrived there at this, you know, ordinary house, and I went into the lounge. It was still dark, and I guess I was expecting to see I was expecting to meet a very, what I'm trying to say is that many of the spiritualists that I'd met before had a very, they were very bold and very upright, and, they had their danda and they'd walk into the temple and everybody would be in awe and reverence. And I was kind of expecting to meet Gurudev like that. But when Gurudev came out of his room, he just briefly glanced at me just for a moment. And, I saw his crystal-like laser beam glance, and just for a moment. But then he lay down his whole body on the floor in front of this Tulsi plant. And he said these prayers to Tulsi. And then he got up and he carefully watered the root of the Tulsi plant and circumambulated her a few times. And I was just struck, by the heartfelt, the humility and the devotion that Srila Gurudev had in the first moments that I met him. So that was a wonderful meeting that morning. I ended up getting Harinam that morning, but not before Gurudev went for a walk in the Auckland domain. And I followed him. We all followed him. We followed him around the Auckland domain. And we sat down at a park bench. And it was wonderful because I think I was maybe one of the only new people. Sajjan Maharaja was there, Brajanath Prabhu, Madhava Maharaj, and myself. And I sat down on the grass next to Gurudev and started talking to Gurudev. And, he said to me a few very profound things. One of them was, the most profound thing from that conversation was he asked me if my parents loved me. He said, "Do your parents love you?" And I said, "Yes, Gurudev, my parents love me, And he said, "You should know that a Sadguru has more love than thousands and thousands of parents for his disciple." And it was amazing to hear that, and to have felt so much love from somebody before actually having spent that much time with him. I said I was a university student. I was studying, and I kind of half expected him to say, "Well, you should stop studying." In ISKCON, I wasn't encouraged to study at university. But he said, "Oh, you should become very qualified." He said, "All my disciples, I want them to become very qualified." So he encouraged me to continue my studies at university. So anyway, that morning, we went back to the house together, and back to the house of Yogesh Punja. And I said, "Gurudev, I really would like to take shelter of you." I said I immediately knew I wanted to take shelter of Gurudev. And he put his hand on my head and he ruffled my hand. He said, "You've already taken shelter of me." And, I said, and he said, "Your name will be Venu Gopal Das." And he started to play the flute. He said, "Venu Gopal Das." And so I had some pine beads that I was chanting on. I believe they were made of pine. But then he took those, and Madhava Maharaj took them, and he gave me these Tulsi beads. And he gave me Harinama Initiation that morning. I sat down and I felt so blessed. Here I was chanting with Tulsi Beads, just been initiated by Srila Gurudev in the room where he's in the next room chanting. And I'll never forget that day. That was the day I took Harinama Initiation in Auckland. That I think was the next day, we went to a program. Just one or two other memories from that time. We went to a program at the local Indian temple, the Hindu temple. And when I arrived there, it was completely packed with people that I didn't know, that didn't know me, and it was they were all packed around Gurudev. And Gurudev saw me come into the entrance. I'd shaved my head because I'd just gotten Harinam. And he, this is when Vanamali Prabhu was speaking about this. It reminded me of this. And Gurudev said he asked the people, he said, "Please, he saw that I didn't have a place to sit, and that he asked the people to move aside, just with his hand gesture, so that I could be comfortable and sit where I was sitting. So he took such loving care for me from the very first time that the very first days that that I'd met him. Such a caring personality. So that was my initiation in Auckland. I guess my aim is to sort of glorify Gurudeva as I go through some of the memories I have of him. So a very humble, loving and caring personality. I've got a few notes here. The next thing I thought I'd talk about was, anyway, I went back to university, and my brother and my girlfriend at the time were there, and I said, look, I've had an amazing experience. I've met this personality, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj, and I call him Gurudev. And they were really keen to see him as soon as they could. But I said, that's fine, but I'm going to India because Gurudev has personally invited me to go to Braj Mandal Parikram. So I wrapped up my university papers and took leave early, and went to Delhi and to Vrindavan. And that was seeing Gurudev in his majestic kind of the side of his personality, where he had thousands of followers, thousands of disciples all around him, serving him. And that was a very different time, but it was, you can probably relate the first time you go to Vrindavan, and it's a bit overwhelming. At the same time, it's just an experience. It's just this all-encompassing experience. And so anyway, that Kartik, at the end of Kartik, I took Diksha. I took Diksha initiation from Gurudev. I was also sick. I had malaria and a few other problems at that time. So, a lot, but I can't remember a lot. But I did take Diksha at that time. I spoke to Gurudev in India at that time, and I said that I had a girlfriend back in New Zealand, and that we'd been going out for 2 years together, and he gave his blessing that we should get married, and that he would marry us back in Moorlambar when he came back to Australia. So I went back to Australia, and my brother and my girlfriend came over to meet Srila Gurudev in Moorlambar, Australia. And I think I've got the timeline here, right? My brother and my wife took Harinama Initiation, not my wife at that time, my girlfriend at the time took Harinama Initiation. And then soon after, Gurudev married us in Moorlambar. We were married in the midst of a festival, and the vows are actually on YouTube, and it's a very personal, sort of intimate time, getting married and being with Gurudev. But it seems to be on YouTube, and lots of people view it. Gurudev was so selfless. I realized that the night he was scheduled to marry my wife and I, he had all sorts of difficulties with his digestion, and he wasn't feeling well, and he hadn't slept for most of the night. But he selflessly, got up and came out and in the public and married us. And he gave us some wonderful instructions about our marriage. He said that if we should never get divorced from one another. If we divorce one another, we may as well divorce Krishna. And, various instructions like that. I guess he was saying to me, don't try to avoid anything. Don't try to avoid any of your vows in this life, your commitments, because you won't. Yeah, that's not the way. The way is through. And you know, he married my wife and I, and we're still married, and we've got 3 children, and we like to watch that wedding ceremony every year on our anniversary and listen to Srila Gurudev's instructions. He also gave my mother and my father Harinama Initiation at that time. They weren't involved in Krishna consciousness very much, but they had been to a few programs and things, and they actually received Harinam at that time as well. So it was, for me, you know, a young man, you know, getting married, taking Diksha, my parents both getting Harinam Initiation. It was just, you know, the most wonderful time. And Srila Gurudev was just so merciful to all of my family. So once we were married, we went back to New Zealand, and so along came with us Bhakti Saha Maharaj and Sajjan Maharaj and Dao Dayal and a few brahmacharis, some wonderful devotees. Gaura Sundar Prabhu, he came back with us, and we did Sankirtan. We did Sankirtan all through the North Island of New Zealand, and we traveled in a van together, and we stayed at campsites at different spots, and you know, we lived very simply. We had peanut butter, you know, on bread for some of our meals, and we drank from the local tap and bathed under the local tap, and we had Mangalati in the forest in the campsite in the mornings, and you know, we had the bliss of you know, that book distribution, being absorbed in all of the Siddhanta and the teachings of Gurudev, and sharing that with other people, and you know, just being so happy and satisfied, living so simply. So that's what we did for a couple of months in New Zealand, and then, you know, it wasn't long before my wife and I decided that we'd gotten jobs in Japan as school teachers. They call them the JET program, Japanese English teachers. No, can't remember what the acronym stands for. It's the JET program. We were just assistants over there, but so we spent 2 years living in Japan from 2004 to 2006, and as luck would have it, Srila Gurudev would stop over for 48 hours every time. I think he came from America to India, I believe. I could be wrong there, but he would stop over in any case every year for at least 48 hours, sometimes longer. So we got to personally host him there. You know, it was just my wife and I. There were probably, I think, 4 of his disciples in Japan, and 2 of them weren't available. So it was just my wife and I. We got to spend time with Gurudev, hosting him in Japan. One of the times, you know, talking about Gurudev being a prankster, not a prankster, but he loved, you know, it was so jolly. What I'm trying to say is, Madhava Maharaj, Rajanath Prabhu, Krishna Das, Gurudev, I picked them one year, I just tell the story while I remember it. I picked them up, and for whatever reason, I couldn't pick them up in my car because I had a 2-door, sort of a sports car. And I picked them up in this van that a devotee had lent me, or had organized. And it was a van later that it turned out to be a van that was used to deliver fish to the markets. So it smelled like fish, and it was a strange van. It had all of the Muslim insignia on the windscreen, because I don't know why, but it had that. But anyway, I picked up Gurudev. I drove to the airport at Narita Airport, and I left the van outside, and I went in, and Srila Gurudev was there, and he was still doing his sadhana. He was still chanting. and he was in a, I think he was in a wheelchair, and he had a blanket over him, and he wasn't really saying much. And then within a few moments, he took off his blanket and he sat up, and the most effulgent being that I've ever seen was sitting there. He took his bead bag off of his hand and he put it on his lap, and he said, "Do you know how many rounds I've chanted today?" I said, "No, Srila Gurudev. I think I had my bead bag. I chanted 6 rounds on my beads." And he said, "I've chanted 116 rounds today." It turns out that he had chanted all the way from America, wherever he'd come from. But then he took his bead bag off of his hand, and he was such a transcendental personality. I gave him a book that one of my godbrothers had written. Not written, but translated from English into Japanese. It was the book called The Way of Love. And he had translated it into Japanese, and I handed it to Gurudev. I said, "Gurudev, here, I haven't translated this, but one of your disciples has, and he wanted me to show it to you." And Gurudev was happy, but he looked through the book and he said, this kanji, this Japanese writing, it's such a it takes so many pencil strokes or pen strokes to write each character. He says it's very difficult to communicate in Japanese. And he said that Sanskrit, he explained to me that Sanskrit was very efficient in that manner. It was, with a few strokes of the pen, you could write a whole concept, a whole word, a deep word. Whereas in Japan, you might need to do 100 strokes of the pen to get that same message across. So that was a wonderful meeting there. And we wheeled him to the car that I'd organized, and we jumped in. Madhava Maharaj, well, the brahmacharis, everybody, Gurudev was in the front seat and I was driving. And as sometimes happens, well, I got lost, basically. I left the airport, or I thought I was leaving the airport, and I got lost within Narita airport with Gurudev in the front seat. And, I was in distress because in those days, cell phones didn't have Google Maps, and all the signs were in Japanese, and I didn't speak fluent Japanese or read it. And Gurudev just started laughing. He just started, chuckling and laughing. And even though he'd been through this long trip and he was obviously wanting to get to his destination, he was just laughing, and he said, "Don't worry, I have faith." First of all, he said to me, "Are you taking me on parikram of Narita airport?" And I said, "No, Gurudev, I'm lost." He said, "Don't worry, I have faith in you. I have faith that you can get us to where we're going." But yeah, we were in this very strange vehicle, and eventually, within 45 minutes, had gotten them to the accommodation that we arranged for them. But another moment that stands out, when I was driving Srila Gurudev, the Japanese sun was hot. It was very hot, and it was coming through the windscreen, and it was on Gurudev. And I thought to myself, and Gurudev had opened some biscuits that Madhava Maharaj gave him, some Pali-ji biscuits or some kind of biscuit, and he was eating them. And I thought to myself, my Gurudev, this personality he's taking on so much what would be considered hardship. Well, it is hardship. For any other person of normal personality for his age, they wouldn't dream of traveling the world like he did so many times, without the comforts. He didn't have much comfort. Here I was, this young disciple with this dodgy van driving him to some accommodation that he didn't know about, and I thought he's such a selfless personality. So we spent 2 days together in a Japanese house with Gurudev. My wife and I, and some other devotees. I don't know that I've got a few other things. I don't know that I need to, unless you have any questions about that part of the story, I'll probably move on.
Sure, Prabhu. Yeah.
So yeah, so when Gurudev left after that, we decided that we wanted to still serve him while in Japan, and one of the ways we did that was by raising money. My wife and I, we learned the Japanese for charity, how to collect charity from the Japanese people. So we would go to supermarkets and shopping malls and raise funds for the Navadvip temple, and that was to keep us sort of engaged in our devotional, have some activity that we could do other than our sadhana. One of the great things about living in Japan was India was so close. It was a $600, $600 return trip to India, and it only took a few hours. So it was fantastic. We went to India, I think, 3 or 4 times during those 2 years to go to Guru Mandal Parikram or Braj Mandal Parikram. I was with Gurudeva in the house there when he stopped over, and I thought to myself, I better call my brother Sadananda from Australia. I'll call him, and I'll give the phone to Srila Gurudev. And I called my brother and I said, brother, here's Gurudev. He wants to speak to you. And I handed the phone to Srila Gurudev, and Srila Gurudev, he said a whole lot of things. He said, one of the first things he said to my brother was, "Do you still like me? Do you still like me?" And and my brother was just, it was such a sweet thing. Gurudev was so like a little boy sometimes. And my brother, of course, said, of course, Srila Gurudev. But I was glad to be able to spring that one on my brother.
It's beautiful.
So yeah, we spent 2 days together in that house. And I do want to go back over the recordings because I recorded most of it, but I haven't still on mini disc. I've got, Gurudev loved, we cooked him lots of Japanese tofu with cumin seeds and rice. He used to like that when he'd visit us there.
Prabhu, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
There's something that really touched me early on deeply. When you talked about, your wife's name is?
Her name is Sudevi.
Sudevi. Oh, beautiful name. So your marriage to Sudevi, because like Gurudev's role was not to be marrying people all the time. So that was great mercy that he even married you in that way.
It was.
But very beautiful that you watch that ceremony every year on your anniversary. And I love the fact that he gave you the instruction, don't divorce, you might as well be divorcing Krishna if you divorce. So I think it's very challenging, being a devotee in the Western world is not so easy sometimes. And being a grihastra, it's like there's a whole thing that goes in with that, there's in many ways we need to look to our acharyas for guidance on how, because most of them lived in temples and the instructions seem to kind of brahmachari based, but there's nothing, the Varna ashram, the different ashrams, they work together. I'm just interested to know to expand on your instructions that Gurudev gave you as a Grihastra, and to kind of like tell us how that's evolved after Gurudev's disappeared, how that's manifested in your life, because I think that would be very interesting to understand his Vani to help you be good Grihastra, and in the acknowledgement it's not always easy.
Yes. No, I hear. Yes, one of the things that he gave so much mercy to both my wife and I individually. He gave so much mercy to her individually. She's got, she's taken the girls to school. I've got 3 daughters, and she's taken them off to school this morning.
3 daughters.
If she were here,
wow.
3 daughters, yeah. And Gurudev named our first daughter. In 2007 he named her. He held her and he named her. It was wonderful. But I think he gave my wife so much mercy, and she would speak about all of the, times he took care of her and taught her and gave her realizations and mercy and humor. She's also quite cheeky, and and Gurudev would laugh with her in Japan about whatever various things. I was a bit more serious, not as cheeky, but her and Gurudev used to get on like that. you know, so he gave us both mercy individually. In terms of how, you know, how it works in Grihastha life, it has been, no, you're right. It is it has been difficult over the last 20 years. But, you know, we really feel that Gurudev's, that's something, there's something transcendental about our marriage, and that Gurudev married us. And, you know, she's a very wonderful wife, and, you know, I don't want to, you know, we've had a great marriage, and she's a wonderful wife, but what has kept us strong in difficult times that do arise in the Grihastha ashram. You're a Grihastha, Prabhu, are you? Yes. So what you know, all sorts of difficulties arise with children and families and everything. So
no temple would take me, Prabhu, I can assure you.
What's that?
No temple would have me, I can assure you.
So anyway, I don't know. Gurudev's been there. He's given us our marriage strength. And he said it on the very marriage day that we had. He said, you should never divorce one another. He said in Western culture, you know, just on a whim you get married, and then on a whim you get divorced. He said, you shouldn't be like this. You should try to be one-pointed. You should serve me because I am your father, your grandfather, and everything. And you should stay together.
So serving him is serving a wife is serving him, is what you're saying, right?
Well, that's right. Yes, he did say it. He said, yes, he gave me the concept that this is a dasi of Krishna, you know.
Right.
And I should see her like that.
Because she's his dasi before she's your dasi, right?
That's right. That's right. I should nourish her, and nourish her spiritually and materially. He said, you should be happy. She should be happy in this life, and in transcendental life forever. So, you know, he gave me instructions to take care of her material needs, as well as her spiritual needs. I think I've probably done better in taking care of her material needs, but not so much her spiritual needs. But I do aspire to be a father and a husband that guides my family spiritually, but it hasn't always been possible.
Yeah, but I mean, the material aspect is it's foundational. I mean, if you're living in the material world, you know, you can say it's the manifestation of the Sandhini Shakti. Without the material foundation and the Grihastha life, how can you have time to be meditating on the Lord? So it's all dharmically, it's all integrated. It's not separated.
It's all integrated. Yes, I didn't want to be somebody that didn't take care of my wife materially, and with the excuse that it was, you know, with the material world or anything like that.
Sure, no, beautiful. You seem very practical. When you came back from Japan, what did you end up doing?
So yeah, we did Sankirtan through New Zealand, and that was amazing. Gurudev encouraged us with that. I guess I'll skip forward a few years because until to sort of 2007, I guess, where Gurudev came to Auckland, and he, you know,
you've got about 5 minutes, by the way.
5 minutes, and a lot of that stuff is in the Walking with the Saints book. I tried to ask Gurudev questions as much as I could every morning, you know, on the morning walks. But before one of the morning walks, you know, my wife had just given birth to our first daughter, and I'd named her Vaishana, you know, thinking that was a beautiful name. When I was in India, I was on the bus near Vaishana. I thought, oh, Vaishana is a beautiful name. Maybe I'll name my daughter that. But Gurudev said, no, this is not a gopi name. Her name should be Lalita. Wow. So he named her Lalita, and that one morning, and
so you have Lalita and Sudevi. That's pretty good.
Sudevi, my wife Lalita, and then we named my second daughter Kishori, and Narayana is my youngest 6-year-old, my 6-year-old. So, you know, one of the things, just to wrap up here, one of the things that you know, was going through part of my personality is that I do have a bit of fear and anxiety. And I said, I told Gurudev this. I said, Gurudev, you know, you were speaking from the Bhagavatam, the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, about how fear arises when a living entity misidentifies who he is. And I said, but Srila Gurudev, when I'm in the ocean, I'm afraid of the sharks here in Australia. When I'm on the land, I'm afraid of snakes. Even when I go walking with cows, I feel that they're going to gore me with their horns. So, what do I do? And Gurudev said, fear exists when you're not performing bhajan of Krishna. I'm reading a few things here. He said, you should realize Krishna Tattva and all fear will go away automatically. One who knows that I'm a spirit, a soul can never be killed and will not be fearful. Somebody's wealth is their Krishna consciousness, and that can never be taken away. So why worry? A devotee is never fearful. So I take those, I read that again and again, because there's so much opportunity for fear in this day and age. And I try to take Gurudev's instructions about doing Krishna bhajan and not being fearful.
That's a very potent instruction.
It was a very potent instruction. It was a very potent instruction. I've got my guitar here, Prabhu, and I could sing a short song that a devotee, Sarvabhauma, I don't know if you know Sarvabhauma.
Of course, yeah.
He's written this beautiful song, and I'll sing it. Look, I'm not a singer, but it's just the words in it are so moving for me, and they're part of what attracted me to Srila Gurudev.
Beautiful.
Is that something that might be appropriate? Just for it's probably about a
Beautiful,
2-minute song.
Please, very excited.
Yeah. One day while walking down life's long road, we met a man wearing saffron robes. Prabhupada was his name. He was chanting the holy names. He said, come with me, my daughters and sons. Your spiritual journey has just begun. Chant the holy names of the Lord, and all desirable things will be, and all desirable things will be yours. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you, Prabhupada, for sending your dear friend to the West. We all know he's Radharani is best. Now happy blessings are coming our way. We know your love is here to stay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you, Gurudev, for coming here a while with your big blue eyes and your soothing smile. We wish you were coming in here to stay, and we know that you must be on your way. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chant the holy names of the Lord, and all desirable things will, and all desirable things will be yours.
Beautiful, Guru. Really beautiful. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
That was Sarvabhauma. He wrote that song. He just inspired
Sarvabhauma from England, yeah?
From England, yes.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, before we move on to our closing kirtan, I wanted to say something about that final instruction because I found that very powerful.
Sure.
When Gurudeva was talking about fear, because we're living in times where there's increasing fear. There's social media that stokes fear. There's increasing political tensions in the world, threat of war, threat of climate change, economic upheaval, all these things, the COVID crisis. But fear, Gurudev really focused on you have arta pravritti and anartha nivritti. So the anartha nivritti, I'm just sort of expanding on what you're saying, because the anartha nivritti is the cleaning of the unwanted things in our heart. The arta pravritti is the putting in of the wanted things. So one is the elimination, and one is the displacement of what you've eliminated with something valuable, the Harikatha, the lila. And the reality is, if you just speak to the logical side of one's brain, if our mind is saturated with Krishna Lila or Gora Lila or Guru Lila, actually, then our mind is completely connected to the transcendental absolute, to the reality, to the place where there's no identification with the temporal, to the place which is outside of time, to the place where we really, our real existence is validated as opposed to this illusory existence. So therefore, we're connecting to the pre-state before we're given the false ego by, before we have the 5 illusions given by Lord Brahma, before we've turned away from God, before we've desired to come to the material world, before we're given the false ego, before we're given our body, we are connecting with that absolute realm where our eternal selves reside. So therefore, it's totally logical. There's no way if we have that in our hearts, then fear cannot exist alongside of that, because we're connected. Even if there's some bodily identification, if we have that and we are in that right sangha and hearing the Harikatha, there's just no way fear can live alongside of that. It's just not possible. So that's why I think Gurudev, he really concentrated on don't dwell on your problems, don't dwell on these anarthas. They will go in time, but go towards the positive. The anarthas will get cleaned up in the due course of time. It's not like we have to wait around to be pure to receive this lila. The mercy of Guru is giving us this lila. It's a very merciful process. So I just wanted to extrapolate on what you said, because I thought it was very valuable sharing, and just for my benefit and devotees' benefit, just to remind ourselves that Vani is very precious. So thank you so much. You did a really beautiful job, and I feel like I got to know you a little bit through this sharing. So thank you so much. And
thank you so much.
And we want Sudevi on. We're coming up. Well, we're coming up to our next one, our final one. But when we go to Guru Memories and we're mixing it where we're glorifying all the different acharyas, maybe Sudevi can come on too.
Yes, I'll ask her, and that would be nice to hear her memories.
Yes, and now Lalita's 15, so she'll be up for it as well, right?
Well, I might have to. She's a teenager. Well, I might have to. That might be a bit more difficult, but
no, I'm throwing out a challenge there.
Yeah, but I would love them to both be on.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And what work do you do, Prabhu?
I've been a school teacher for the last 16 years. Srila Gurudev, he actually encouraged me to become qualified and complete my degree, and I'm a school teacher.
Oh, great. What do you teach?
History, geography, and Japanese.
Wow. So maybe you're going to soon teach Bhakti as well.
Yes, that would be a great thing to do in the next couple of years.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, well, watch out for that. Thank you so much.
Yashodhara, thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it. Jai Gurudev.
Done up for now.